Ivy Rebecca. She was just perfect. Everything about the pregnancy and the labor was wonderful. It just wasn't the outcome that I was hoping for.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us. Welcome to Still a Part of Us. We are so grateful to be here with Sharon today to talk about her sweet little Ivy. I'm looking forward to having this discussion because I think this is one where I think many of us will run into, and that could hopefully help somebody along their path. So welcome, Sharon. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing her story with us.
Thanks for having me and giving me the opportunity to share her with the world.
Yeah. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to do this. So, okay. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, where you guys kind of are located. And also,
Okay.
would you tell us a little bit about where what your family looks like when Ivy was born?
Sure. I live in the Midwest, so Chicago suburbs. And at the time, I was a stay-at-home mom. I have two living children. At the time, my daughter was 6 and my son was 2, or
Okay.
almost no, newly 2 when she was born.
Okay.
I at the time was married, and it was just the four of us
Yeah.
before and then while I was pregnant.
Yeah. And anything that you guys like to do as a family or at the time, or kind of what hobbies do you have
Um,
and everything?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, we're kind of a gaming family.
Oh,
Probably more so my husband and my son
uh-huh.
than and my daughter than myself. But
Uh-huh.
so they would actually at the time I think Pokemon Go was kind of a big thing on the phones or whatever. So we
Mm-hmm.
would all go out for walks together and hunt Pokemon was something that we did a lot in our spare time.
Which
I
is really
myself
fun,
would,
actually.
what's that?
It's really fun.
It is, and it gets exercise, right? And
Exactly.
then it's
Yep.
getting the kids out and everyone's having fun.
Yep.
I a lot when I was home because my husband worked like a normal 9 to 5 type job
Mm-hmm.
in the city, and so he had a commute too. So a lot of times during the day with the kids, we'd go and explore things around town and
Yeah.
like do a lot of outings with them.
Yeah. That sounds super fun. And as just a point of reference, how long ago at the time of this recording was Ivy born?
She was born January of 2017, so we are coming up on almost her 7th birthday.
Yeah, we're getting really close to that actually. So it's just yeah, we're just right underneath it. So
Yeah, the holidays kind of snowball into her birthday for me. It's all
yeah,
together. So this is the start of
of
the
that
time, I
period.
guess, of remembering her.
Yeah. So so you had two kids prior to this, and was Ivy's pregnancy planned, or was that a little bit of a surprise? Was this
She was not planned. We were
no?
actually, so at the time that I got pregnant, my son was still probably about, a year and a half. He was pretty young, and
Mm-hmm.
I was on board with wanting another child still, and my husband wasn't so sure. So we agreed to table it for now. We were good
Okay.
with where we were at for now.
Yep.
And actually, kind of funny enough, I was sitting on my couch and I just had, I guess, hindsight was heartburn, but so bad that I swear I was sitting there and thought that I was having a heart attack. Like
Oh, oh.
I was halfway to telling my husband, like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I think I need to go to the emergency room or something. I was in the bathroom, kind of a mess both ways, and it was
Yeah.
just crazy. And I don't know what prompted me to say, well, maybe I should test because we weren't trying. So I wasn't thinking. And actually, with my son, we had to go through quite a bit of fertility.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't even in my head at first that this could be a possibility. But from having tried for so long for my son, I had some tests and stuff saved up. And that's when we figured out, okay, we're pregnant.
So you hadn't necessarily been like outright preventing anything, but you knew that
Correct.
because it was very difficult, just recently, really, that it
Right.
was probably not going to be anything that would happen readily.
Oh, totally. Because we tried like for, I think it ended up being 15 months to get pregnant with my son. And
Yeah.
we're on board with fertility, getting ready to start like, what does IVF look like? We had actually
Oh.
gone for, with my son, we had gone
Hmm,
for that
hmm.
first consult when we found out we were pregnant with him. So it took a
Okay.
long time and many rounds of Clomid to get him.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't even a thought in my head
That it was
until
possible.
we were there.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, obviously you, I think you said you were quite surprised. Did you tell your husband or like, well, how did that
I
go at
did,
the
and
time?
funny enough, I don't remember a lot of the how, like, that discussion went or anything like that, but, we were both happy. I mean, it
Oh,
wasn't something that was necessarily totally on our radar, but we were definitely both
yeah.
happy to welcome another baby to our family.
Oh, good. Okay, that sounds great. Did you tell your kids kind of right away? I mean, obviously your 2-year old probably, or 1.5-year old was probably not cognizant of what was happening, but did you tell your daughter?
Yeah, I don't really remember a lot of I know we told them, and I don't remember a lot of kind of how that went. I know, like, once we expanded to telling, like, his parents and my parents, like, everybody was just really excited
Yeah.
to have her join the family, and, just with everything that went on with my son and trying to get pregnant with my son, like, I already had a home Doppler, so we were kinda listening to her
Oh,
heartbeat, and everybody was just really happy to bring her into our family.
that's amazing. Usually we have appointments around 8, 9 weeks, typically in the United States. Is that kind of when you had your checkup, or did you kind of go in a little bit quicker after that
No, I went
initial?
in, I think, at the normal, like, 8 to 10-week mark. I actually had before I stayed home with my kids, I worked in women's health, so I worked
Oh,
for an OB/GYN office,
okay.
and so kinda was very familiar with, like, how the process goes, and, trying to remember yeah, it must have been the early ultrasound that we went to see her the first time.
Yeah.
My husband was working and couldn't get off work, so I went with my mom and my oldest daughter, which was kinda just a really special experience to have
Yeah.
because she was able to come in with me, and she was able to see her on the screen and hear the heartbeat, and
Yeah.
I remember that being a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. I wish I could have brought my daughter to some of my, yeah, ultrasounds later on down the line. I think that's really sweet. And
Sure.
looked okay. Everything looked okay
Yeah,
at that
she
one.
looked great. Heart rate was great. Everything was fantastic. Everything looked great. We set up our appointments. I knew that I was gonna go with midwives because I had midwives for both of my previous pregnancies.
Okay.
And I actually knew that I was gonna hire a doula as well
Oh,
because I had
okay.
a doula with my second pregnancy, and it was just fantastic to have.
A
So I
great
did have a
experience.
doula set up pretty early on in the scheme of things.
And what was the thing? I guess maybe what was the experience that you had with that doula previously? Was it just like you felt more empowered or advocated for
Yeah,
throughout the
so the doula I
process?
had with Ivy's pregnancy was different than because the doula I had with my son, she had moved out of area.
Oh, okay.
So, the one that I had for Ivy's pregnancy was highly recommended from the doula I had previously, and I had kind of just heard her name around within the birth community because she was pretty popular in our area.
Hmm.
And I had just known her from working for the OB/GYN practice, had seen her
Oh,
face a
okay.
lot, and it was just a really comfortable friendship, I guess I'll say, from the very beginning. And even later towards the end with everything, she played a really pivotal role.
Awesome. I am unfamiliar with when doulas, like when people usually employ a doula. I'm not completely sure how to.
I
Is
think
it
it's
fairly
most
early on?
common to get a doula on board probably sometime in the third trimester,
Okay.
second or third trimester, just as you're getting kind of closer to the birth. But I knew pretty early on that I wanted to have a doula for my delivery. So I think I started looking for that probably. I'm trying to think. I think the first meeting that I had with her might have even been like 12 weeks along or somewhere on there. It was really
Okay.
early.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to get, the providers you want. So
Sure, and she's popular, so I wanted to make
yeah.
sure that I had her on board for us. And yeah, it was early on, and I remember, I mean, hindsight kind of a thing, but we she came to my house to meet us ahead of time and just kind of go over basic things. And during that meeting, I had gotten up at one point to go and get a drink or something along those
Hmm.
lines, and had gotten up and just like, I don't know if it was a blood pressure dip or what, but had fallen.
Oh, okay.
Nothing big, and like I was fine, but it was just kind of probably more embarrassing for me than anything else.
Yeah.
Um, but the meeting went great and she was on board. And that was kind of I mean, at that point, there wasn't really a lot that needed to go on between her and I.
Right.
We were able to, she was always available for me, but it was really more in that as it gets closer to the birth that, she's available for texting back and forth or whatever might be needed.
Gotcha. And then with going with a midwife, was it like a midwife practice or like where there were several midwives that could and would be involved,
It
or was
was.
it?
My first daughter was through the practice that I worked for.
Oh,
And
okay.
then my son had been through a different practice because I had a different insurance at that
Oh,
time. So this was the same group of midwives that I had for my son.
okay.
And so I already felt pretty comfortable with, there were, I think, three midwives at the time. And then so appointments, you cycle between all three because you don't know
Great.
who's going to be there when it's time to have
Yeah.
the baby.
Okay. Great. So you went in, checked in around 8 to 10 weeks. So it looked good there, and
Everything looked
then
great.
did you just have your regular? I mean, because it's pretty far spaced out in those early months. It's like once a month, I think.
Right,
Um,
right.
s-
So for the beginning, it was once a month, and it was, I was a stay-at-home mom, so I would try to schedule those appointments for when my oldest was in preschool so that I could maybe just bring one child with
yeah.
me to go to
Yes.
those appointments.
The juggling. Yes.
Sometimes I had both of them with me, but I mean, it all worked out.
Yeah.
And my midwife was, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes from where I live. And so we would just we'd go and we'd either grab lunch before or after, and it was
Yeah.
kind of just part of the outings that we did.
Yeah. Well, good. Okay, and everything's looking good. You had some pretty serious heartburn. Any other issues that
Oh my
or are
gosh.
you feeling pretty
Yeah, I
good?
had heartburn and nausea, like definitely like wasn't throwing up all the time, but I just felt miserable throughout the
Oh,
whole pregnancy.
the
Like it
entire
wasn't just the
pregnancy.
first trimester, it was
Oh,
all the way till the end.
bummer. Dang it. Gotta love when that
Um,
happens.
so they put me on I don't know if it was Zofran. I feel like it wasn't Zofran, but it was something like Zofran.
Okay, yeah.
And I was just taking that all the way through the end of the pregnancy.
Okay. Yeah, that is rough when you have that just nausea the entire time. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so then usually the next kind of the major appointment that people have is the 20-week anatomy scan, or the
Yeah.
between 18 to 21, 22 weeks, depending on when you guys can get in. So how did that go? Was your husband at the time, was he able to go to that, or was it just you and the kids in tow?
It was actually, so for that one, we made sure that we set up an appointment for a time that he could get off work, that he could come to the appointment.
Awesome.
And we weren't, it was kind of I was waffling. I like the idea of not finding out because we did find out for the previous two
Okay.
about gender.
Yeah.
And so we were thinking that maybe we wouldn't find out for this time. We already knew going into this that this for sure was going to be our last pregnancy. And so we kind of toyed with the idea of maybe waiting and keeping it a surprise. But when the time came, I wanted to know.
Yeah, you're like, I can't do it. So you did
Right.
ask them to tell you at that visit, not necessarily kind of wait and do a reveal or something like that.
Yeah. And that whole process was just kind of another unfortunate series of unfortunate events. We went and got lunch before the ultrasound because
Hmm.
I knew that, it's good to have something kind of sugary so that the baby's moving around and
Yeah.
they're able to get the pictures that they need to get. So we had lunch beforehand and I was probably over full, and we were driving to the hospital, and between the morning sickness that I had had
Oh,
and I just lunch, like I ended up getting sick in the car on the
oh,
way to the appointment. So we parked and went in, and the first thing I did was go into the bathroom to kind of get
eh,
myself as cleaned up as possible to
oh,
go in for the
shoot.
appointment.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, that's not pleasant at all. Oh, I'm so
No,
sorry.
but it was kind of, I mean, we just laughed about it because, of course,
Of course.
right?
Okay,
Um,
and then how did she look at the? on the ultrasound?
She looked great. I didn't take them a long time to get the pictures that she needed to take. She was right on par with where she should be, and we were both impatient and wanted to know. So we found out that she was a girl, and I was secretly really happy about that because
Really?
I already had my one of each, but I myself growing up never had a sister, so kind of always
Oh,
was really looking forward to giving my daughter a sister.
yeah. Yeah. That's
Um,
pretty fun.
so everything looked great. We found out, and then we, on the way home, stopped at the store to pick up like a baby sister
Oh,
onesie type thing
uh-huh.
to bring home because that's how we told our families what we were having and broke it to the
Oh,
kids. And my daughter was so excited. Like I said, my son was under 2, so I don't think he really had much of
right.
an idea of what was going on. But she was really excited.
Oh, that's really cute and so sweet. I just think, yeah. When you found out it was a girl, was your husband at the time happy about that also? Like, was
Yeah, I don't think he really had a preference either way, and we were just both, I mean, she was healthy, and that was the
that
most
was
important thing to
yeah,
us, and
amazing.
yeah.
And then did you start, like, thinking of names? Did you have names already
We were
going, a
kind of
list?
tossing some things around, but that was, the part of it too, which I don't know. I mean, it was nice just to know that she's a girl, and then it was like, "Okay, well, what can we call her so that we
Right.
can refer to her
Yeah.
as that?"
Yeah.
Um, and it was kind of back and forth. We had slightly different tastes in names and kind of different opinions on what we might want to have, but I really very strongly kind of felt drawn to the nature type names, I
Mm.
guess.
Mhm, mhm.
And I think he wasn't totally sold at first, but it just really stuck for me, and that's just kind of what it ended up being was Ivy. And then I think we were debating at that time between Ivy and Naomi,
Mm.
and closer to like Thanksgiving time, it just really Ivy cemented for me, and we bought a Christmas stocking with her name on it to
Oh,
go with the same ones that the kids had, and
yeah.
oh yeah, she was Ivy.
Choose Ivy.
Yeah, she was
You're like,
Ivy.
Sorry, you're gonna have to deal with that."
Yeah, and middle names for all of our kids have always been family middle names.
Really?
So Rebecca just came from great grandparents on my mom's side of the family.
Yeah, I love that. I love family names. Okay, so that turned out really well. You guys are going along, this is probably fall time now, right? That
Yeah,
or
so it
s
was
I guess it was maybe more summer that you probably had that anatomy
I
scan.
feel like it was like maybe August timeframe somewhere
Mhm.
that we had that anatomy scan, and then late fall was when we just really like we were decorating for Christmas, and I remember
Yeah.
getting a stocking with her name on it, and we have this like Santa list that hangs on the wall and has like our names on it, and we added her name to it, and
Oh,
she
that's
was
sweet.
just really enmeshed in everything we had going on with our family, I feel like,
Yeah,
from before she was even born.
yeah. She's yeah, and it's so easy to do that with your Christmas traditions, I feel like. There's yeah, just to include.
Yeah.
It's that's so fun, it's magical. And, so after a while, you're hitting what, 3rd trimester, and it's starting to be you're probably being seen quite a bit more often. Is everything looking good at that time?
Yeah, everything was normal at appointments. I did my midwife said, we do feel like she's smaller,
Oh, okay.
which was fine with me because my first was 9.5 pounds when she was born, and
Oh.
then
Oh.
my yeah, she was a big girl, and then
Yeah.
my second was 7'14". So he
Okay.
was more of a normal sized baby.
Yes.
And
Okay.
then when they were saying, she is on the smaller side, I was just anticipating, okay, so she'll be more my son's size
Yeah,
versus
versus mhm.
a giant baby. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And it's just so different, I guess, like having 2 kids at home already and then having it be in the middle of the holidays, like I was so busy with
Mhm.
just day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Um,
When was your due date? Was it in January?
she was due on January 21st, so she was actually born the day after she was due.
Okay. And so okay, so, and had you on your previous pregnancies, had you gone early or later?
I bake longer than usual. My first was 40 weeks and 5 days, and then my
Okay.
second was 41 weeks and 2 days. So as we got
Wow.
closer to Yeah, long time.
I know. I
But
was like, good on you.
as we got like I just was felt so at peace about it all. Like I wasn't like her as her due date was approaching, I wasn't anxious like when is she gonna come? I just had a very calm like she'll be here when she's here. And I knew, I think, from working in women's health and then just from the previous kids that I'd
Hmm.
had, it could be anywhere from 38 to 42 weeks. Like
Right.
that's the
It,
normal scheme of things. And I wasn't really I mean, I wanted her here because I was getting excited to hold her and meet her.
yeah.
But whether that was at 40 weeks or 41 weeks, I really didn't feel a huge urgency of trying to guess when she was going to come.
Yeah. You're just fine with how the natural
Yeah.
course of things.
Yeah.
And were you planning on having just what other plans were you having? Was it hospital birth? Was it home birth?
Yeah, so my midwives work out of a hospital, so I knew
Hmm.
that she was going to be born in a hospital, and
Hmm.
we had our doula on board. I was hoping to do a water birth. I
Hmm.
wanted to do a water birth with my son, but he had some things going on with the NST when I checked in that we weren't
Oh,
able to do that.
oh, gotcha. Okay.
So I was really hoping that this time around I was going to get my water birth and that it was trying to stay home as long as possible before
Yeah.
going into the hospital and just kind of a natural plan was on the books the same with, I mean, my daughter, I had an epidural and then my son, I ended up going natural. And the plan this time around was to try to do it natural again.
Okay. It's nice that you have a little bit of experience just so you could like, oh, let's try this now. So,
Yeah, I think I felt really like just kind of it's gonna be what it's gonna be,
mhm.
and I'm just here for the ride.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's a good way to a good attitude going into it because I think when you have like this is the way it should only be, you're
Right.
gonna probably be disappointed about how things go.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, as you're going in for these more regular visits, are you scheduled to do any NSTs? Because I know not everybody is slated for those. It's only, I think, generally if you're high risk or if they have concerns. Were
Right. I'm
you
trying
doing
to
any of those?
remember. I know that we had discussed that if I went past 40 weeks, then they would do, twice a week NSTs just to kind of monitor and see how she was doing. So that was in the plan and we had talked about that just because my previous two went over.
Yeah.
So that was
Okay.
kind of on the plan for if I did go over, but I don't recall ever having an extra NST because I was concerned about movement or anything like that.
Yeah. And during this time, were you tracking her movement? Were you counting kicks or anything of that nature?
I definitely wasn't counting kicks. I was
Hmm.
aware of, when she was moving and when, her usual
Hmm.
movement times were. And from what I can remember, all of that was pretty standard and pretty normal. She was she was breech for quite a long time. I remember doing
Oh, okay.
I was over 30 weeks and she was still breech,
Hmm.
which both of mine had turned by that point, I think, my previous pregnancies, but
Okay.
this was the third pregnancy, so my uterus was already kind of stretched out, and I'm sure
Hmm.
she had plenty of room to she was a smaller baby, so she had
Yeah.
plenty of room to move around, and nobody was too concerned. But at that point in time, I was doing like just different ways of laying or different
To see if you
yoga
could
type procedures to try to see if I could get her to turn.
to move. Okay. Yeah.
And she
And that
did finally turn.
oh, she
I
did.
want to say it was right about 36, 37 weeks.
Okay. Awesome. And you were able to feel that or they just caught that on ultrasound the next time you were in or
They checked that on ultrasound. One of the ultrasounds I had towards the end of the pregnancy, I know that they checked very quickly just to confirm, okay, yes, she is head down.
okay, good. Yeah, that's that because that can get tricky sometimes. Did you notice when
Yeah.
she maybe flipped or anything, any big movements or
Not
anything
that I
like that?
recall. I know I was a little bit concerned about her being breached just because
Yeah.
that would complicate things a little bit for the birth and
Yes.
whatnot. But yeah, I don't know if I recall when specifically she turned, but
Okay. Just sometimes some people notice kind of big movements when that happens. So,
sure, sure.
yeah. Okay. So you guys are just hanging out at home. You've had a Christmas time. Anything unusual? Anything that was of concern during the
No, everything
holidays?
was normal and good. I guess as we get closer to her birth, I was home full time, but I was going to appointments. And right around 39 weeks. I was coming home from an appointment with the
Mhm.
midwife where everything, looked fine and normal. And I was in a lane to turn, and the person that was supposed to turn the other way ended up turning into me. And so we had
Oh,
gotten into a car crash. It wasn't anything like I was fine. She was
yes.
fine. My car wasn't so fine, but it was
Mhm.
like front end damage that it took.
Yeah.
And that I think, unfortunately, just dealing with like insurance and rental cars,
Yes.
and I need to make sure that I have a rental car that will fit 3 car seats
Yep.
because
This is
so like I feel like all of that car stuff took a lot of my cognitive abilities in that last week of pregnancy that I honestly can say I probably don't know if I was as aware of her movements and
her
stuff during that time because I was stressed.
yeah. I mean, that's a lot to have to deal with, especially when you know you're not getting your car back very quickly or a new one very quickly. So, yeah,
Right.
that is pretty stressful.
And I didn't at the time, like, I know from working in women's health that we would tell, if there's ever any concern or anything happens, come back in. So I
Mhm. Mhm.
might have gone in to make sure everything was okay. But at that time, I was literally on my way home from an appointment.
Yeah, and you're like, "We just saw,
So
like,
I was like, we just
everything."
saw her. She was good. I sat when I was sitting in the car waiting, for somebody to come pick me up because my car wasn't drivable. Like I felt her move during that time. So I'm like, oh, she's okay. Like
Yeah, okay.
and I think she was fine at that time.
Yeah. And were you fine? Like, you didn't get hurt or anything
No,
like that
no,
that
I was
okay.
fine.
Okay.
Everything was good.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
unfortunately, like a lot of that last week, I just remember being on the phone with insurance companies and trying to figure out rentals and
Yeah. That is a hassle. I'm so sorry. That is a that is a pain in the butt.
yeah, pain in the
Uh,
butt for sure. Um,
okay. Yeah, so
But the
then
overall thought was, it ended up working okay because I didn't need my car because I was at home. So the next thing that I would need my car for was to have a car seat for her for after she was born.
right. So tell me, the events leading up to when you found out the news about
Okay.
her.
So I was 40 weeks exactly. Yeah, so it was the evening of like at my 40 weeks that I had like late night kind of started having some contractions and stuff.
Okay.
And at that point in time, both of my kids were asleep, my husband was asleep, and once things started kicking off that I knew that this was labor, like it was peaceful in my house. Like I
Mhm.
had the lights that were on were dimmed really low. I had some candles going. I was occasionally, bouncing on one of those balls
Yeah.
and just kind of riding it out. Like I knew I didn't really necessarily from start to finish do hypnobirthing, but I was familiar with some of the techniques and was just really, and it was really special time, I guess, that I had with her. Like I felt very comfortable with the process and what was going on. And,
Mhm.
occasionally hit, like had a contraction timer on my phone that I was just, timing the contractions. And I think it was earlier in the morning, like maybe 3 or 4 in the morning that I kind of went. And this time my husband did know that I was having contractions and stuff, but I said, go rest because I won't need you for a little while,
Yeah.
get some sleep. And I woke him up think about 4 o'clock in the morning or so and was like, okay, we're getting kind of close now. The
Okay.
plan had always been for my mother-in-law to come to stay with our children
Right.
while we went to the hospital. So I remember I woke my husband up and was like, give your parents a call because it's probably going to be pretty soon here that I'm going to need them here. And him in his half awake, half asleep, calls and tells his dad that his mom's going to need to come over in probably about 5 or 6 hours. And then he gets off the phone and I'm like, you need to call them back because I need her to come now.
Yeah,
Like she
it's
needs to, I'm giving her enough time to maybe, get up and get showered and ready, but like I do need her here pretty
yeah.
soon.
Yeah.
Um, so that was all in place for her to come. And he did call his parents back to be like, okay, hey, we do need her to come now. And at that point in time, I was in active labor. And I remember I was kind of alternating between being in the bathroom or standing at my kitchen. And I was kind of going back and forth between throwing up and, having some
Oh,
orange juice to try to kind of rehydrate myself and
yes.
throwing up
Yes.
again. And I
Oh,
think at that time in hindsight, like I was probably going through transition
yeah.
and so that was just moving on to the final parts of labor.
Yeah.
In my head, I never thought that I was quite that far along because my first labor was 27 hours. My second
Oh,
labor was, a good 15, 16 hours. So
yeah.
I thought for sure that I had plenty of more time.
Yeah. Because it had only been like what, 9 hours or so from the previous night, or?
Maybe I think at that point in time it might have been like 6 hours. Like
Oh, okay. Yeah.
it was not very long and it still felt pretty manageable until it didn't.
Hmm.
So we were actually, it was cold outside. I don't remember if it was snowing or not, but it was cold. So my
Hmm.
husband had already started the car. My mother-in-law arrived and she was taking care of, getting the kids up and ready for the morning. Thank goodness she was here because she was on the second floor of my house with the kids. My husband had the car started. I'd been on the phone with my doula
Yes.
throughout this point. And actually, okay, so I'm going to backtrack for a
Yeah,
second
that's
because there
fine. Go.
was one point in time where, and this was, I think, before I had gone into active labor. Like I was kind of concerned about how her movements were and stuff. And my doula had said, okay, well, just, have some juice or something sugary and, do a couple jumping jacks and see if you feel some movements after that.
Okay.
And I did. And I felt her move. So I was like, okay,
Okay.
she's there. Things are fine. And then so everybody knew, like my mom was on her way. The plan was for her to be at the birth. So she was going to meet me at the hospital. My doula
Okay.
was going to meet me at the hospital.
Hmm.
My husband had the car going and we already had our bag ready to go. I guess in typical third baby fashion, we really didn't have a bag together until that morning where he quickly like threw some things into a bag
You
but it
got to
was
do
ready
what you
to
got
go
to
by
do.
the time
Yep.
I was trying to get out the door. So he had the car started and sorry, there's sun coming in. Sun is something that I associate with Ivy. So for the sun to be really bright right now is kind of special.
Yeah.
Um, so he had started the car and I was literally trying to get my bathroom is off of my kitchen on the first floor. And
Hmm.
so I was kind of like I was in the bathroom trying to get out of my bathroom to go through the kitchen to get to the front door to get out.
Yeah.
And just like suddenly in my kitchen, all of a sudden I dropped to all fours and she was born. Um, I totally unexpected, had like clothes on and everything. And then it was really quick, like, get her out. And yeah, when she was born, the cord was around her neck 5 or 6 times. It was around her neck a lot and really tight. So she was not breathing when she was born.
Oh.
Um, we had to my husband called emergency services. And then, yeah, the next thing that I recall was people being in my house. There were a couple of people that were working on her. There was somebody, I mean, I think her role was really to be the distractor. Like she was kind of talking to me and how do I feel? And, just trying to engage me with discussions. And I was really more concerned about, is she okay?
Right.
I think I realized at that point already that she wasn't alive, but there's always that part of you, I guess, that just hopes that like, okay, she's going to go, she's going to get medical attention and then she's going to be fine. I remember them. So there was a group that took her in an ambulance to the hospital. And then um, and then there was another group that took me
Right.
by ambulance to the hospital. When we got to the hospital, I told my husband, I said, you need to go with her.
Hmm.
Like, I'll be okay. Go with her, make sure she's okay. And so he went with her. And then they brought me into my own room. And then I don't remember how much time had passed, but the neonatologist came in and like as soon as he walked through the door, I just knew.
Yeah.
And he said, she's not alive.
Oh. Did they know how long that she?
He was able to tell me that it looked like like just based on kind of what she looked like, that
Uh-huh.
she had passed sometime within 24 hours or so of her like actually being born. So we just missed her.
Oh.
Um, my thought on it all was that I mean, because it was pretty obvious when she was born, like her cord was around her neck. So it was a cord
Yeah.
accident.
Right.
My thought is that she got tangled up sometime during the time that she flipped
Yeah.
to be head first. And yeah, I don't know. I think, luckily the hospital that I was at had a cuddle cot. So they kind of like I was already in a room, and I remember briefly arguing with the person because whoever was taking care of me was like, well, you've got a tear. We can go ahead and stitch it up. And I remember telling her, no, it'll heal on its own or whatever. I'm not worried about it. But she was pretty insistent on stitching it up. And I didn't really have it in me to fight with her. So I
Yeah.
remember just, getting that stitch or whatever that I needed for the tear. And they brought her in to us, and it was just perfect. She was honestly just looked like she was sleeping.
Yeah.
Like it had been so recent that like even her skin tone and everything, she
What
looked like a new
perfect.
baby.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh wow. Sharon, can I
yeah, and go
can I
ahead.
ask you a couple quick questions? I am like, some people don't think we usually talk ahead of time just so that we understand what's going on, but I don't think I realized that you gave birth in your home,
Yeah.
and so did your husband at the time like assist with that? I mean, or did she just drop out? Like
She just dropped out. Like she was actually in like my pants. Like she was already out.
oh my goodness.
Like it
Uh
just happened so fast. Like I had no idea.
yeah. Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah, she was out, and I believe it was either him or I, we unwrapped her really quick, trying to think,
Yes.
okay, well, let's get the cord unwrapped. And
Yes.
I think he was on the phone with 911 and doing CPR.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, my mother-in-law was already there. She was upstairs with the kids, thank
Right.
goodness. So they
Right.
were not witness to really any of
Yes.
that. My mom was already on the way to the hospital, but he had called her. So she was then at my door. And that's what I remember, like, because we had all the emergency vehicles outside,
Of
and there was
course.
somebody standing at my door just to kind of try to oversee things. And I remember her not really arguing, but just frantic with them, like, no, I need to go in there. That's my daughter.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was quite a bit of commotion.
Yeah. And when you guys got to the hospital and your husband was with Ivy, did he come in with a neonatologist? I mean, or was he just kind of hanging out with you after a while? Did he know ahead of time? I guess did he
I'm
know?
not sure. I mean, I don't think he was with me yet because I think I would have known from him
Yeah.
had the neonatologist said something.
Yeah.
I think I might have still been in my own form of a recovery room of some sort
Mhm.
when the neonatologist come in. And to my knowledge, I only recall myself and then the neonatologist there when he told me. The next reuniting with my husband that I remember is when I was up in a regular room.
Mhm.
We were just both devastated.
Yeah. I just can imagine, first of all, having just the shock of she just being born, like, so
Yeah,
suddenly, and
yeah,
then having to, kinda think on your feet and calling 911, and yeah, that must have been extremely traumatizing to the both of you, I suspect.
yeah. I think there's a lot within those like minutes or hours
Yeah,
of time that I don't even know that I recall or remember on a
right.
linear standpoint just because I was
Yeah,
in shock.
yeah. Did you tell the rest of your family afterward or
Yeah, so his mom already knew something was not quite right
right,
because she
right.
was at our house
Yes,
when the
everything.
emergency vehicles came.
Yeah,
Thankfully, she can be a little bit pushy, but she was stayed upstairs with the kids just to kind of keep the kids busy. So that was wonderful. And
yeah,
then my mom had taken it upon herself then to make sure that like her siblings and my dad's siblings, because we've got a very close knit extended family. And at the time that I was up in a regular room, everybody was there. Like my aunts and uncles, my brother, his brother, our parents, like everybody was
they
there
were
for
there.
us. And that was just, I mean, I get chills even talking about it now because that
Oh,
was just
that's amazing.
so special to
Yeah,
have everybody there
and
supporting us.
yeah,
And
and getting to meet Ivy
And
too.
getting to meet her
Like,
too. Like that was I wanted everybody to hold her. I was like, meet her, hold her.
hmm
And people that wanted to did hold her. And I remember one thing that was super special was my aunt lives in Indiana and she had had a stillbirth
oh,
many, many years ago. So when I was still a kid, my cousin was stillborn and I was young enough that I really don't remember a lot of the details, but
yeah,
even her living a few hours away in Indiana, like she was there that same day to sit with me. And that was just to talk to somebody that could kind of understand
yeah,
where I was at. And even just not necessarily to talk, but to sit with somebody that kind of understood where we were at. It was really special.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that space, that yes, just to sit with somebody
Yeah.
is so
So
precious.
she was beautiful, and we had already chosen an aunt and an uncle on the opposite side of the family to be her godparents.
Oh,
And
uh-huh.
they were both there after she was born. So when somebody from the hospital was able to come in and baptize her, like they were there for that. And it was just really special to have people there initially. And then I felt like that support carried through in even the handful of months right after she was born.
Yeah, that is so important yeah, that grieving
Yeah.
process. They're grieving as well, of course, that's part of their Ivy's part of their family. I wanna point out one thing that is, so interesting because 'cause you're talking about all these people that are in your room, and this was pre-COVID, everybody. This was,
Yeah.
um
So they could come.
they
Yeah.
could come and they could celebrate, like, as usual, and things are different now, and,
Right.
so grateful that you had that chance to have all that family there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so thankful that the hospital that, okay, so I didn't make it to my intended hospital
Oh,
to
okay.
give birth because they brought me to a hospital that was just closer in
Closer.
vicinity.
Yes, okay.
Um, and thankfully, that hospital had a cuddle cot, which at the time I had no idea what that even was
Right.
because I had no reason to know.
Yes.
But because of the cuddle cot, we were able to keep her. It was 2.5 days that I had with
Oh.
her.
Oh, and that was, like, just as long as you wanted to keep her, is that
Yeah. So we had her for 2.5 days, and kind of towards the end of that, like she was starting to change a little bit.
Mhm.
And, we just were able to realize, okay, it's time for us to say goodbye, and go. And I hadn't told the kids yet. We hadn't told the kids yet that it wasn't a good outcome.
Yeah.
I, in hindsight, wish that I would have had them up to the hospital so that they could meet her.
Yeah.
I mean, with my son, he was so young that maybe that wouldn't have made a difference, but my daughter was definitely old enough to be aware of what was going on. But when my son was born and she came up to the hospital, she really didn't want to leave and was like, "Well, I want mom with me." And that was hard. And though I might have made a different decision, I think that the decision that I made worked for the time because I was more worried about her having trouble separating from me again, and then how do I navigate, but I wanna be here with Ivy, but my
Right.
kids at home need me. So I think I just felt like I knew that between the grandmas, my kids were in good hands at home, but I really just wanted to spend as much time as I could with Ivy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Um,
so important.
so did briefly communicate with my kids during that time
Okay.
just to say, "We're okay, we're gonna be at the hospital for a couple more days." And like during that time too, my husband was going back and forth between, being there for the kids for periods of time and then
Right.
being
And then
back at
coming
the
back.
hospital with me.
Yeah. What did you guys do in the hospital that to kind of make memories or, like, really be with her and
Should I close the blinds? Is this sun not really helping me anymore?
No, I think you actually are, yeah, you're not totally blown out or anything, and if it reminds you
Okay.
of Ivy, I
Okay.
think then that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, I know they brought us, so the funny, we had brought that little sister onesie, like
Yeah.
sleeper, to the hospital because our plan was to put her in that at some point
Mhm.
in time in those first days. And then for whatever reason, just in the frenzy of everything, like when I'm looking in my bag, I couldn't find any of her things. Like
Oh,
I couldn't find her clothes or whatever. Thankfully, the hospital had stuff that they were able to put her in.
yeah.
So she was dressed and They brought us like a comb so that we could brush her hair. That's okay. So I remember like the room that we were in had a rocking chair, so we
Uh-huh.
could rock with her in the rocking chair, and they brought us a brush that we could brush her hair. She had a lot of hair, which my first and my second had like almost none. So she had
So
quite a
this
bit
was
of like dirty blondish, light brown hair on the top of her head. And so I remember
yep,
just brushing her hair. I think we changed her outfits a few times and just loved on her. Like I sat with her a lot, and I feel like every now and then I would put her back in the bassinet just more for preserving her body purposes,
right.
I guess, not letting her get too warm, but that urge is there to just want to hold her and love on her the whole time.
Yeah, and cuddle and keep her warm, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like that. And that was, yeah, because she needs the bed to keep her cold so that her
Yes.
skin and everything stays,
Yep.
you know, how it's supposed to. But yeah, that's like the natural mothering inclination is to bundle them up and keep them warm and snuggle them. And she was perfect. She had perfect little fingers, and she was small. She was 5 pounds, 12 ounces.
Oh, yeah.
So she was a little peanut. I don't remember how long she was, but I think it was probably something on the lower end of
Mm-hmm.
average.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing that seemed too out of place because my mother-in-law is a small woman. So
Oh,
it
okay.
just, could have been partly genetics that she was smaller, although, in hindsight, I think with the cord around her neck, that was probably limiting
What she was able,
some of
yeah.
the nutrients and things that she otherwise would have been.
Yeah, been able to get because yeah.
So we had a lot of time with her, and she stayed in the room with us the whole time. She was in like a little bassinet just right next to the bed. And we had, various family came and visited and spent time with us and held her. And it was so like even some of the nurses that I had, it was just so special. Like they would come in and they would comment on how beautiful she was, or
Oh,
I had a nurse that would ask, can I hold her? And so it was just really special to have some of those normal things that maybe would happen had she been a living baby. Like
yeah.
there was still, I'm so happy that the hospital that I was at had the training and the ability to be so tender during that time with us.
Yeah, it seems like, well, the fact that they have a cuddle cot was a huge, like, that does indicate that they've seen loss as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And it sounds like the nursing staff was very aware and
Mhm.
and helpful. At the time, I know that you mentioned your doula was very helpful earlier when you mentioned that. Was she able to come in and help you be an advocate during those couple of days that you had with her?
She did. She was there right away. And I think, I mean, I could tell like she was as heartbroken as we were. Like
Yeah.
she was just had a really, and my midwives, like, during the last part of my labor, I couldn't get a hold of my midwife. And I don't
Oh.
recall what that was about or concerning, but I know that
Mhm.
I had put
Mhm.
a call in to my midwife to be like, hey, we're going to be headed to the hospital soon. And
Yeah.
then I remember being a little bit miffed with her because I wasn't able to connect with her during those last maybe couple of hours of labor and then, right at the hospital. But like the midwives that were part of the group but were not on call still came in on their time off
Oh.
to come and check on me and to meet Ivy and to just my doula was there on and off throughout the couple of days that I was there, which is way above and beyond what her
Yeah.
doula contract was. She does some work with like hypnobirthing, essential oils and things like that. So she and my midwife had created like a care package that came not right away, but a couple weeks later, just with like some teas. And my doula was pretty instrumental in after she was born and after I got home. Like the next thing that happens is your milk comes.
Yes.
And I think initially I thought that I would want to pump to donate the milk.
Okay.
And I did pump once or twice in those first couple days just to alleviate some of my pressure, but
Right.
I couldn't do it.
Mhm.
So my doula was able to give me some suggestions on some methods or some oils that I could use to kind of help dry my milk up.
Yeah.
And I feel like even still, like one of those oils is sage oil. And
Mhm.
even now, still, like that's one of my favorite scents
Oh,
just because I associate it with her.
yeah.
The same with like frankincense is an oil that they used when she was baptized.
Oh, so that
And
also, yeah.
so that smell always, like I find that at some points in times I'm like searching for that smell because I just associate that with her too, because her body smelled like that
Yeah.
after she was baptized for the rest of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know. So when we were in the hospital, like I mean, the next questions that you're faced with is like, well, what happens next? They asked if we wanted to do an autopsy, and I really didn't want to disturb her body in that way, I guess. I think, had she been born in a different way, maybe, but with her having the cord wrapped so tightly around her neck so many times, it
It felt like it
seemed
was
fairly cut and dry to me that that was
what had
what
happened.
had happened.
And is that what the medical team,
Yes, they said it was a cord
essentially
accident.
essentially okay.
Yeah. Um, and so I chose not to have an autopsy done, but I did say that they could do like a pathology on the placenta to see if there was
Okay.
anything that they could tell from that.
Yeah.
And all of that came back perfect. Like
Yeah.
everything was perfect.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for my mom because she really was able to jump in and kind of spearhead some of the questions that, I mean, because you don't expect that in your birth you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do with your baby in terms of, are you going to have to bury them somewhere? Are you going to cremate them? My paternal side of the family has a mausoleum that
Mhm.
some of my like grandparents and great grandparents are in. And
Mhm.
actually, baby Mark, who's my aunt's son
Oh, yeah.
that died a few decades before, is also in that mausoleum. So my mom had reached out to my uncle who had already, like, they had said that it's fine that Ivy could be in the mausoleum with baby Mark.
Yeah.
So that was a relief to not have to worry about that portion of things. Like, I did have to show up at the funeral home to be there to see her, and
Yeah.
because they still like prepared her body and everything, and we did have a short memorial type thing at one of the buildings of the cemetery where the mausoleum was.
Oh, okay. And did all your family come for that?
All my family, all my friends, my midwives were there,
Oh,
my
good.
doula was there, like, everybody was there and showed up for us. I Public speaking usually doesn't bother me too much, but I didn't really talk at her
Yeah.
memorial because I don't think
Mm.
I had it in my capabilities at that point in time.
Yeah.
But I did pick out a poem for my mom to read that we ended up putting on the back of her prayer card. Because I guess jumping back, that was another thing that at the hospital they had Bella Baby who did like their newborn pictures.
Oh, yes.
But previous to that, like they had never done a bereavement pictures. But they did
Oh,
for Ivy. We had somebody that was a Bella Baby photographer at the hospital that was
uh-huh.
willing to come in and take pictures of Ivy.
Yeah.
So we have pictures of her, and then I guess moving forward, Bella Baby did continue to also do the bereavement pictures at that
Oh,
hospital. So
that is wonderful.
that was really special to have because we had just pictures of her in her christening gown that we were able to use then as the front of her prayer card.
Yeah.
And we had a family friend who was involved. I don't know what his specific title is, but he was involved with a local church, and he was willing to donate his time to come and kind of do the church portion of things
Gotcha.
for the service. And it
Right.
was just, I feel really thankful that I had people that were able to kind of make some of those decisions and phone calls and things for me because I don't know that I had the bandwidth to do that at that point in time.
Yeah. You don't. You
No.
just you're on autopilot and you're zoned out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all of those things. Yeah, that is kind that people stepped up. And I think people realize how shocking this is for you and for your husband at the time. And It's kind that they stepped up and helped.
So we had the ceremony and she went into the mausoleum, and my doula had taken it upon herself to create a meal train for my family
Oh, yeah.
for the handful of weeks after Ivy was born, where friends and family could sign up and bring us meals. And it was nice because, every now and then maybe somebody that dropped off a meal would come in and spend some time with us. But then there were also people that, they just left it outside the door. And
Yeah.
then, so we had food to eat, but I didn't always have the bandwidth to sit and talk with people
Yes.
because I feel like a good portion of time after that, like I was just on autopilot. Like I still had my older kids to take care of. Thank for my husband during that time too, because really navigated kind of continuing the routine with my living children. Because even though I didn't have a baby at home to take care of, I still was in that mode of like, I should be taking care of a baby. And I
Exactly.
don't know if I have the bandwidth. Like, I love my older children and with
Yes.
every piece of me, but I was really kind of stuck and bitter about the fact that I should be taking care of a newborn.
Yeah.
One thing that was super helpful was when we were in the hospital, my mom had called to ask if I wanted her to put away the newborn things because I'd already had like the swing set up and her bassinet and
Yeah.
all of her clothes. And I'm grateful that they asked because some people that might be important for them to be able to do that on their own. But I knew that, yes, since she had asked that, yes, I would like her to kind of move
Do
things.
okay. So she was able to put those things away
She put
or
those things away. And
out of
so,
sight so that you didn't have to be always reminded.
right. And actually, after we got back home, so while we were in, this is all over the place, I'm sorry. While we were in the
You're fine.
hospital, they had given us two small, like stuffed bears
Mhm.
for my son and my daughter to
Yeah.
have. And I asked them if I could have one as well
Yeah.
because that was just like I snuggled on that while I was at the hospital, and it came home with me, and it's still probably pretty treasured as far as something that I associate with her.
Yeah.
That clothing that I couldn't find of hers while we were at the hospital was in the bag the whole time.
Oh,
So I didn't find it though until after we got back home. And so her bear that I got at the hospital wears her little
oh,
sister onesie.
cute. That's good.
Um, so I'm kind of glad that I still have it.
Yeah.
Because there was, when it was planning her services and stuff, there was the talk of, well, what will she wear? And I contemplated having her wear that little sister outfit, but we decided in the end that just getting something new for her to wear would be a better idea. I wanted to keep that onesie.
That part.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
While you were there also, because you hit on that you got photography, like the photographs done, were they able to do like handprints and or hand molds or, feet
Yeah, we
molds?
had so we've got like little oval, I don't even know if they're supposed to be ornaments or what they are, but I keep them in like their little dish that they're in, but they were able to make imprints of her hands and
Oh,
her
good.
feet.
Okay.
And they made one, so both hands and both feet, which ended up being wonderful because, later on down the road, I did get divorced from her father. And
Mhm.
so because we had two hands and 2 feet, we were able to kind of split it. So he has a hand and a foot, and I
Yeah.
have a hand and a foot.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um, so we had those. They had the Bella baby pictures that they took. I didn't take a lot of pictures on my own that I recall.
Mhm.
We have a clip of her hair that they took. I have the brush that I brushed her hair with.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff's just, I've got like a butterfly gift bag. I guess that's the best word for it.
Yeah.
Tote bag that
Yeah.
they kind of put it all in, and that's what I used. It's got all the like the cards that I got after she was born, and all of that stuff is just in there along with the CD that has her photos on it.
Yeah. I know. You just get that little box or the little bag when you
Yeah.
leave. No little baby with you.
So when we bought her little sister outfit, we bought a couple of other outfits
Mhm.
just because I mean, the way that it lined up with because her sister was born in December, so they were going to be
Oh.
like spot on for
Ye
seasons and stuff.
yeah.
So 95% of what she got was gonna end up being hand-me-downs.
Yeah.
So, the
Yeah.
couple of things that I bought specifically for her are actually still in my closet because I can't bring myself to donate them to somebody or
Yeah.
even get rid of them, so they're still hanging in my closet.
Yeah. Yep. You just can't do it. So I understand that. I was going to ask with the funeral that you guys had or the small service that you had, were the kids able to, were they there at that? And were they able
They were
to
there
ever
at that.
see
I So
her?
that was all closed.
Okay.
So I don't think they got a chance to, like, see her for themselves, but at the point in time that she was in the casket, like, she already looked
Yes. She
quite
had.
different
Yes.
from
Yeah.
what she looked like. So
Okay.
we have, like, after we got back home, we did share with them, like, the pictures that we
Oh,
had of
good.
her while she still kinda looked like just a normal little baby,
Yeah.
and they came with us, so they were there at the service, and then, I guess the next closest holiday to that, at Easter time, we did go to the mausoleum with the kids and
Hmm.
brought, like, my son brought his cars, and we brought some chalk to just kinda color on the steps, and we brought a little, I can't remember what book it was, but it was a board book that we read. Like, I read to my kids who probably still benefited from it at that age, but, like, it was really us reading to her,
Yeah.
and just spent some time there where she was, and, I haven't really been back there since just because that's not where I feel close to her.
Okay.
I feel close to her in my house, and I think that that's just because that's the last place
Yeah.
that we were together while she was still living.
Yeah.
Like, for a long time, I found like, for probably months after she was born, I found myself kinda gravitating to that kitchen sink, like, where I was
When
when
she
she
was
was
born.
born. Like, I'd
Yeah.
find myself just standing in that area. Yeah, I don't know, like, for a long time afterward, it's like you feel like you're walking around in a daze.
Hmm.
Like, I remember the first outings of going to the grocery store felt so strange because I went to the grocery store in the early parts of my labor with her just to do some walking.
Yeah.
And so that was the last time that I was with her for her before I knew that she was dead, I guess. So, like, going to the grocery store for the first time just felt it was hard. Those
Yeah.
first times of doing anything
Yes.
afterwards were hard.
They are extremely so. Sharon, this has been wonderful to talk to you about Ivy's life and how much she meant to you. I'm still just so in awe of like just what had happened, and I'm just so sorry for
It's
your
funny,
loss.
like, I think as time has passed, I'm able to kinda it's weird because in some other dimension where everything was the same up until that point, like,
Yeah.
I think about it, like, had she been born alive, I don't even know that we would've went to the hospital. Like, I think we would've just tucked in at home and,
Yeah.
you know, just did our thing. It
Yeah.
all sucks. The whole thing sucks, but
Yes.
I think looking at it so many years out now, despite the morning sickness during the duration of the pregnancy, like, my labor was everything that I hoped it would be. Like, my labor went amazingly, and just kind of even, like, the sweetness that I have of knowing throughout the pregnancy that this was going to be our last pregnancy, like, I just am so grateful that I was able to cherish that time that I
Yeah.
had with her.
Yeah. It sounded like you really did. Sharon, thank you so much for sharing and for sharing Ivy's life. And I so appreciate the sweet and tenderness, like you just spoke so tenderly of her. And I just you can see the love, the great love that you have for her, for your family. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.